Welcome back to Young Voices Big Issues. And today we're going on an interesting journey through the rich history, culture and politics of the Tibetan Plateau and its surrounding regions. I'm your host Ishaani Agarwal, and today we're going to dive deep into the unique world of Tibetan Buddhism, its historical context and the complex dynamics between Tibet, China and India. So whether you're a history buff, a spiritual seeker, or just curious about the region, we've got something for you. So sit back, relax, and join us as we explore the heart of the Himalayas. Tibetan Buddhism is a unique and complex form of Buddhism which emerged in the Tibetan and Himalayan regions. It's like the grand buffet of the spiritual practices, combining elements from early Buddhist teachings, Mahayana Buddhism, and the Vajrayana tradition. This blend creates a rich spiritual stew, seasoned with sacred mantras, symbolic mudras, and intricate mandalas. Central to the Tibetan Buddhism tradition is the role of lamas. These spiritual leaders are akin to the Jedi masters of the Buddhist world. They guide practitioners with wisdom and compassion. The Dalai Lama, the most famous of these lamas, is often seen as a reincarnation of earlier spiritual masters, adding an interesting layer of spiritual authority. Fun fact, Tenzin, the current Dalai Lama, is the 14th in an ongoing succession of these esteemed leaders. Tibet was not always the remote control magical place that many people think it is. It was historically an independent area with unique political, religious and cultural systems. Tibetan Buddhism played a central role in this society, with the Dalai Lama serving as both spiritual and political leader. Talk about multitasking. Tibet-China relations have been a historical roller coaster, with periods of Tibetan autonomy followed by periods of Chinese dynastic domination in the region. However, the current war between Tibet and China began in the early 20th century, an era of very important geopolitical shifts. Imagine being invited to a party and then you're being told that you have to wash the dishes. This is exactly how the people of Tibet felt in 1950. The People's Republic of China, led by the Communist Party, decided that Tibet should be a part of China. This was not a welcoming invasion, and the 17-point agreement was signed in 1951. This agreement was supposed to grant Tibet autonomy under Chinese sovereignty. However, many Tibetans believe that it was a pressured compromise rather than a genuine compromise. Let's talk about the uprising of the Dalai Lama then. The situation in Tibet experienced a climax in 1959 with massive revolts against the Chinese rule. This was no ordinary protest. It was a desperate struggle for sovereignty and cultural preservation. This revolt was brutally crushed by Chinese forces, resulting in killing thousands of Tibetans. During this chaos, the 14th Dalai Lama made a dramatic escape from Tibet. The Dalai Lama embarked on a savage journey through the Himalayas while appearing as a soldier, finally arriving in India. It sounds like a plot straight out of an action movie, but this was real life, filled with danger and uncertainty. Upon his arrival in India, the Dalai Lama was granted political asylum, and he established a government in exile in Dharamshala. He has devoted his life to protecting Tibetan culture, religion, and autonomy from this new platform. The Dalai Lama's escape and India's granting of asylum introduced a significant point of tension between India and China. The situation increased in 1962 when India and China engaged in a brief but intense border war over the disputed territories in the Himalayas, particularly the Aksai Chin and Arunachal Pradesh. Border concerns continue to be a major cause of conflict between India and China. Both countries maintain a significant military presence along the line of actual control, which serves as the de facto border. There have been regular conflicts and clashes. The most recent of these was the 2020 conflict in the Galwan Valley, which caused casualties on both sides and further damaged relations. The Tibetan issue remains to be a sensitive and significant aspect of India-China relations. India's continued support for the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan government in exile is a cause of the frustration on China's side. Diplomatic engagements between the two countries are frequently affected by the Tibetan dispute, with China consistently pressuring India to limit the political activities of the Tibetan community. In a recent news, the visit of a high-ranking US official to India to meet the Dalai Lama has added another layer of complexity to this situation. This visit came after the US passed the China-Tibet Dispute Bill, which seeks to restart talks with the Chinese government over the autonomy of Tibet. China responded with a classic diplomatic tactic, stating that they are ready to talk with the delegates of the Dalai Lama, but not with the representatives of the exiled Tibetan government based in India. Despite these standoffs and concerns, India and China share strong economic ties. They're like frenemies, trading partners with a side of strategic rivalry. Both nations are major players in global trade and economics, and their economic interactions have often been surpassed by strategic competition and mutual suspicion. China's growing influence in South Asia, particularly due to its Belt and Road Initiative, has been a point of dispute. The BRI, a major and important infrastructural and economic developmental project, aims to enhance global trade routes, but has raised concerns in India. India views Chinese investments and strategic partnerships in neighboring countries like Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Nepal with suspicion, thinking about them as a part of a strategy to encircle and contain India. The relationship between India and China gets made more complicated by this regional scenario. Both countries are members of international organizations like BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which provides forums for economic cooperation and diplomatic engagement. However, the actual strategic rivalry generally overlooks these interactions. The Dalai Lama continues to persevere in promoting for Tibetan culture and autonomy despite many challenges. His actions have attracted lots of worldwide attention, increasing awareness about the Tibet struggle. The Dalai Lama has received multiple honors and recognitions, including the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989, as a result of the world's response to his message of non-violence, compassion, and peace. Sounds like the Dalai Lama would be the richest person alive if wisdom and kindness were coins. In addition to working for political change, the Dalai Lama has dedicated his life's work to protecting Tibetan culture and religion. In order to preserve Tibet's rich spiritual legacy for future generations, he has founded institutions in Dharamshala devoted to the study and practice of Tibetan Buddhism. His teachings, with a high value on universal principles and interfaith harmony, overcame religious and cultural barriers and are now widely and globally accepted. Tibet's human rights situation is still quite concerning though. Reports of religious repression, cultural assimilation, and restrictions on freedom of expression are very common. The Chinese government has implemented policies aimed at integrating Tibet more closely with the rest of China, often at the expense of Tibetan identity and autonomy. Imagine being told you can't have pizza anymore because it's not culturally appropriate. That's the kind of loss Tibetans are facing with their own traditions. The re-education campaign, which aims to weaken Tibetan religious and cultural practices while promoting loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party, is one of the most controversial policies. Monasteries, which are traditionally known for being centers of Tibetan learning and spirituality, have faced increased scrutiny and control. Monks and nuns are required to undergo political education sessions, and expressions of loyalty to the Dalai Lama are severely punished. It's like having to take mandatory classes on how to love your least favorite subject. Despite these challenges, the resilience of the Tibetan people is remarkable. Grassroots movements and international advocacy groups continue to raise awareness about the human rights situation in Tibet, calling for greater freedom and autonomy for the region. The global Tibetan diaspora, including the vibrant community in Dharamshala, plays an important role in preserving Tibetan culture and advocating for their homeland. It's like a worldwide family reunion, united by a shared dream of freedom and cultural preservation. With that, folks, we come to an end to today's episode. Thank you for tuning in to Young Voices, Big Issues. Make sure to join our community for more deep dives into the fascinating cultures and histories which shape our world. This is Ishaani Agarwal signing off. See you next time as we continue to uncover the stories that lie beyond the mountains. Until then, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep exploring.